Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, once again joined by my good friend Shadow Raptor. Just couldn't keep this guy away.
Well, I heard you were talking about RPM today, so I had to come defend it.
What do you mean you heard? You told me to talk about RPM. That's how we got here.
You told me you wanted to, and then I told you that I wanted to participate.
Well, in any case, we're going to go ahead and discuss Power Rangers RPM. And before we get started, what does RPM stand for? Is it Racing Performance Machines? Or
that's the official... it's like, yeah. No
okay, so the first thing we go ahead and mention before we get started is I don't think either of us really watched any RPM episodes recently. Frankly, I haven't watched them since it broadcast, but I do remember a lot about them. You haven't seen it in preparation for this?
I haven't. Last time I watched it was a few months ago because I was showing someone that, yes, Power Rangers could still be cool.
That's a bad example in my book, but... Alright, so basically what it is I'm on the con side, and Shadow Raptor here is on the pro side. Now, we got a couple of things I just kind of listed off here, so I'm going to go ahead and start and say, let's start with the premise. Alright, so as it's explained by Dr. King in the opening titles, that a computer virus has taken over the world, all humanity is lost except for this last city in Corinth, which supposedly is in Boston, according to some people.
Well, one map makes it look like it's somewhere in Mexico.
Either way, it's full of white people because it's New Zealand, but but that's where we're up into the series. And the thing that got me interested when I first saw it is they had leaked this promo on the internet, and it was really good. It was like 2 or 3 minutes long, and it was just pretty much shots from the first 2 episodes. Really a lot of unmorphed stuff, stuff with the villains, shots of the city, and all that. And somebody on Ranger Board had made the comment that it looks more like a Sci-Fi Channel original series than it did Power Rangers. Now, I think my problem is I believed too much into that because I thought we were getting something really interesting, really unique there. So I want you to first start us off with, what did you like about the premise, about the setup for the story? What worked for you? And I'll go and say what did not go ahead and work for me.
Alright, so for me, what really worked was, yes, again, I love the premise, post-apocalyptic Rangers. I love the characters. I know you have your issues with some of them, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that, yeah.
And I really liked the progression of the plot. I loved the fact that the Rangers got into an arms race with Vengeance.
Well, let's kind of start how it starts out. What do you think about the idea of a post-apocalyptic Power Ranger team, and how, based on your interpretation of that, how well do you think RPM performed in that? Sorry.
Well, there were, of course, times that faltered. I will not deny that, but I still felt that it held up to its premise very well, because it never seemed to forget that, because it would be all too easy to forget your premise, to fall into the standard monster of the week, go out, fight the robot, go Megazord, celebrate back at the base.
Well, first of all, it does fall into that formula a few times. I mean, it has the Power Ranger formula, no doubt there. But here's my problem with the premise when I started, and I think it's probably episode 3, Ray, is when I first started noticing, because Summer takes Dylan into the park, and there's all these children playing, and people are reading books and going about their normal day and stuff. And I thought to myself, these are the last people on Earth. These are the last humans that we know of, according to the series premise. And these people are really acting like nothing is happening. Now, I think a few months before this, or it might have been the same year, the year before, I'm not quite sure, but X-Men Origins Wolverine had come out, and Terminator Salvation had come out. And what it seemed to me is it would be more of an amalgam of those 2 series, mainly with Dylan's character being the Wolverine-esque character, and then the Terminator Salvation End of the World fighting the machines thing. When you compare those 2 visions, not that Terminator Salvation is a great movie or anything, but to me, it really painted how the world would be if machines took over. I believed it. It would be that gritty. It would be that desperate. That's how these characters would act. It really broke it for me on a number of occasions when we saw the people of Corinth not acting like it's the end of the world. Not that they should be panicking, but I really don't think that this woman should be walking the park reading a book in the middle of the afternoon. I'm sure that this city, maybe, let's say 1 million people to be generous and all that, I'm sure she has something more important to be doing to fend off the robot hordes waiting at the door.
Yeah, that's true. It's been proven over and over that the people of Corinth are extremely lazy.
And something else that bothers me with this premise too is that, and we'll probably get a little bit more on this when we get to Ziggy, but the whole idea of the cartels. Now, I like the idea that Ziggy's from an organized crime syndicate. That's kind of like the darkest shade that we've had on our Ranger, really, as far as what his profession was, because you wouldn't think somebody who worked for the Godfather, essentially, would be a Power Ranger. Yes. Exactly. But then they continue their operations when it's the end of the world. And I believe that the Kingpin once said in Spider-Man, the end of the world is bad for business.
Well, see, I liked the cartel because it reminded... did you ever see the movie 2012?
Yeah, I saw 2012.
You know how the rich people were the ones who were first in line?
Yeah.
So that's how I viewed it. That Fresno Bob and the cartels probably banked Corinth to some extent. And so I would see them getting into the city just based on their connections and whatever other underworld things.
Well, they can get in by their connections because they just let anybody in. I mean, that's evident because we see in the first episode, they're just driving up in cars and school buses and all this stuff. And anybody who's in is in. And of course... Also keep in mind, there is a prison in the caves below Corinth. And again, it's a great idea if you want to do, the cartel thing and you have these prisoners and Dylans in there. But I'm sorry, are we really spending money on green jello for the prisoners? It just seems to me that their great ideas are just in the wrong place. That I don't think this is how this city would function. This is not what they would be doing if it was the end of the world or after the end of the world and whatever, and the robots are still there. That takes me out of it. That's what really bothers me about RPM is that they don't have this sense of immediate danger. Is the way I would put it.
That's a fair point, and yeah, that bothered me at times. Maybe it's just maybe I was able to go back into it whenever they had shots of the sky of the top of the dome changing, just to remind you that, don't worry, it doesn't look like this naturally.
Well, I mean, yeah, they kind of keep reminding us it's the end of the world, and that's the problem. If they have to show the establishing shot to remind us that, film 101, you have to put it into the story. Because I always imagined, and this will be my last point on just the premise of the series, I always imagined that they would have an episode where some survivor of the Holocaust basically comes in and sees Corinth and goes, you people are living in a fantasy. This isn't how the world works. That Corinth would be like some anomaly in the world or something and bring them back to reality. But that didn't happen, so any last thoughts you have about the overall premise of the series and again, how it was executed?
I feel that the over-idealized Corinth gave a sense that there's something to fight for and that, I guess, a ray of hope that could be restored. And yes, it would be more hopeful to see people overcoming adversity because then you get to think that these people could restore the world, not just that the Rangers would do it for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see the idea of like the single flower blooming in the bloody field of soldiers or something like that. I mean, it's a good symbol, but again, logically, practically, that's where I have my problem there. Let's specifically talk about each Ranger.
Okay.
And, the thing is that these are very diverse Rangers. They don't really fall into a bland category, except for maybe one. But they're pretty good in their personality. And let's go each one. Now, for those of you who saw my Worst Red Rangers video, you know that Scott, the Red Ranger, Ranger Series Operator Red, which I'm not going to call him, we're just going to call him the Red Ranger here.
Yeah.
He was on my worst list, and I'm just going to briefly say my thing, because again, those of you who already watched it know this, but again, he just doesn't seem like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders for the position he's in. Because I understand how everybody else acts, that makes sense, but Scott definitely needed to act more serious. He needed to be more that leader. He needed to be John Connor. He really needed to be more of John Connor, more of this kind of desperate figure, I think, in order for us to really buy, again, the end of the world premise. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and say about that, because I don't want to talk more about than I already have. So tell me your thoughts on Scott.
And I agree that Scott is a bit bland. He's the one that, out of all the Rangers, stood out least to me, along with Summer.
Yeah, and he's also the one who looks like he stepped out of High School Musical, which I think he did.
No, he just looks like Corbin Blue.
Okay.
I guess what really sold him for me is I enjoyed his relationship with his father. I enjoyed their squabbling. I really enjoyed I forget which episode it was, but they were having an argument with each other about where to post guards in the city.
Okay.
And so that, for me, I guess it didn't really hammer home that he's, the guy who's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, but it shows that, yes, he was concerned about protecting the city and wanted to take a proactive approach in doing so. Yeah,
and I will say he is very proactive compared to some of the others. But again, he has to be for his role and everything. And I did like some bits with his father. It just seems like he could have done more with that. But it always seemed to me like his father was almost resentful that he was the Red Ranger. Although I think it was his father who chose him to be the Red Ranger. Is that right? Or
no, I believe it was Dr. K, because
Dr. K chose.
I think K chose each Ranger, except for Ziggy, of course.
Yeah. I think I'd have to rewatch those episodes, Ranger Red, which I have to admit, it does make it easy when you're doing a backstory on Ranger to name the episode after them, because that is helpful when we go back. Because I was going to watch Ranger Yellow so I could talk about Summer, but didn't do it.
I believe it was a flashback, and I forget which episode.
Probably My Brother's Keeper or something like that.
It showed that Summer, Flynn, and Scott all met each other around the same time.
Yeah, they all met from the day of battle, basically, and all that. Which, and back to the premise, that's actually a pretty good setup, because I always like how each story ends with Vengeance attacking, so they're leading their lives into this event, and that's how, Now that was good. I'm going to give credit where credit is due in the series, even though I hate it. I will say that worked for me. I liked how that happened. Anything else about Scott?
To me, it feels like the way you describe your perception of Scott, it really reminds me of how he's...
Scott.
Yeah, did I say something else?
You said Scott.
Scott. Okay.
Not
thinking of SPD.
Yeah.
No, the way you describe Scott, to me, reminds me of how he was portrayed in Clash of the Red Rangers. He's a lot more jokey in Clash of the Red Rangers than he is in...
Yeah.
Now, if you based it purely on that, then yes, you would be completely right.
Mm-hmm. But, and again, honestly, I didn't watch a lot of episodes back to back to review. I mean, you just go from memories, and people do that. I mean, props to some people who do watch it, but right now we're both in college, so it's a little bit harder for us to do that. So, our apologies if we are, kind of missing certain things right there. But again, that's just kind of the way this is going. But I think we remember enough to at least we're having this conversation.
Right.
Now I want to get to Flynn, because most of you are going to be surprised. I love Flynn.
Oh, I love him too.
He's my favorite Ranger. He really is. I mean, any episode that's with him, I really like those episodes.
Are there any other Rangers aside from aliens that don't hail from the United States?
Xander.
Xander and Tanya.
Tanya's from Africa and all that. Catherine's from Australia. So we got some international flavor there.
Yeah, I guess in recent years, though.
Yeah, because it's all in New Zealand. There's really a lack of a lot of diversity.
Yeah, then you get Xander, who they just decide, go use your accent.
Yeah. So the thing about Flynn is I really liked his backstory in Ranger Blue. Now, to the cheesiness of it, yeah, there's that whole Braveheart parody with tennis rackets and him saving the flowers and stuff like that. But his relationship with his father, I felt was like the best father-son relationship, I think, since Wes and Mr. Collins. Because, you know, the whole thing is he's trying to prove to his father that he's worth something. And that's even when he's a little kid. Mm-hmm. And then when he grows up and he's become the Blue Ranger, it's like his father doesn't really take note of it, but his father has newspaper clippings of him.
Oh, I remember
which brings up a good point, like why are there newspapers in Corinth? I really...
Yeah, I mean, anyway, you can just broadcast news on the dome.
But anyway, back to Flynn. The thing I like about his character is he's genuine, he's fun, and really, again, if this was supposed to be darker than it was, he would be the person who's really kind of bringing them out. Because, like I said, with my best Red Rangers, Jason was the consciousness of the group, or the conscience, excuse me. I think Flynn is the conscience for the group, because he is... I'm going to hesitate to say he's the most moral, but he's got the better compass.
And I believe that Flynn is the one that's closest to the common man.
Exactly. He is that everyman.
Out of all of them, because Summer, rich kid, Dylan doesn't remember anything, Ziggy in with the cartels, Scott, military. But Flynn, just a common man before he became a ranger.
Exactly, and those are the best characters, and we'll get into more of that when we get to the next Ranger right here. But yeah, Flynn was the best one. I liked him. I thought he was great. Any disagreement there? Or?
No, it sounds like we're on the same page there.
Okay.
Flynn too.
Now, the next one, this is the one I hate the most, and that is Summer. What are your thoughts about Summer first?
I enjoyed parts of her backstory. I like the fact that she's a spoiled rich girl that has decided to, who abandoned all of her wealth to try to fight for the common man. But her character is almost ruined for me, and it's supposed to be her character's fault. The arranged marriage episode. Did not like that.
Okay, first of all, why is she the only Ranger that got a 2-part episode explaining her backstory? Not to mention, you had to wait till the next week to see the rest of it when we know she survived. I mean, that really spoils the tension there, if you ask me.
That's true.
I didn't like the fact that she's the rich girl. And maybe this is just from my point of view, kind of maybe how I grew up, kind of lower middle class and all that kind of stuff. It's just the idea that we are introduced to her in her flashback as a spoiled rich girl. She's got this Alfred-like guy around her, helping her out, and she's perfect in everything. Everything she did was perfect. Fencing, I think the horseback riding, judo, whatever it was, she was perfect in everything she did. And then she had these vapid friends, and she was vapid too. And I like that it takes the end of the world to make her see the error of her ways.
It wasn't even the world that made her...
Well, it was her friends abandoning her, but it was because of the end of the world.
That and the butler dying.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was surprised that he dies. Did he just die there? What? He's not coming back? He's not being resurrected?
Power Rangers. He needs to come back by the end of the episode.
Yeah. That was good. I did like that because it was a surprise. Because I'm waiting for him to come back, and he doesn't. Just like Scott's brother. I was like, when are they going to bring him back into the show? But yeah, she's just this perfect girl, and then she does do that 180 in her personality, which...
The 180 was a bit...
because like her and her flashbacks and the way she treats everybody else, and she's always like this character that's going around, are you doing this? You should be doing this. Let me talk to you about this. Let me help you with this. She's nosy. Let me put it that way. She's always trying to get in everybody's business.
She turns into a mother of sorts. And she's the teen mom.
Well, here's the thing, too, is like, and she's also going for Dylan. Okay, the mysterious, brooding guy in the leather jacket. Yeah, be still my heart. I mean,
I liked how she made fun of him for it at first, but then they played it to a T.
And yeah, she's just like into it the entire time. She's like, oh, he's so mysterious. And then, of course, in the last episode, you're going out to the unknown where the radiation may still be around.
Take hands and let's do it.
Yeah, let's go out and brave the wrecked machine world together.
I like how because at one point she says, "Do you have?" She makes fun. She says, "Do you have to work at it to perfect that brooding loner attitude?" But then, she plays it to a T. When they almost kissed before they got the whale sword or whatever it was.
Yeah. I just didn't believe their relationship because, of course, I don't want to be in a relationship. Oh, maybe I do. That's kind of how I got it from him, and it's just, of all the people to be interested in, she would be the least, I guess if it was me, I wouldn't like Summer and all that, but again, for the vapid qualities, because I think that's still a part of her.
It's like a Power Rangers rule, though, that if there's one chick on the team, she's going to fall in love with whoever the loner is. Think about it. Ninja Storm. You had Dino Thunder.
Yeah. Why has that become a TV trope now? I mean, why couldn't it be like in Magic Ranger where the young girl fell in love with the guy 500 years older than her that happened to be a frog? Now that's an interesting story.
It's strange how this doesn't come up on the two girl teams, if you think about it. But I guess that's a tangent for another.
So, there's Summer, and that's, I think, for the both of us and stuff. Now I'm going to get to one of your two favorite characters.
Yes.
First one being Ziggy.
Yes, Ziggy.
All right, why do you like Ziggy?
I know we just talked about how human Flynn seemed, but despite the fact that Flynn has more of a connection to the common man, I think Ziggy is the most identifiable character on the team. Because because a lot of fans, they screw up. They're, they wish that, they're not as perfectly athletic as everyone else.
They have useless talents.
Useless talents.
Yes.
Useless knowledge. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of nerd fans who think, what am I doing with my life with this encyclopedic knowledge of Power Rangers or Pokemon or anime or whatever? And that's what I like about him, that he overcomes those flaws to be a hero in spite of everyone else around him coming down on him. Nobody wanted him to be a ranger. When he finally became one, Dr. K constantly wanted to bench him. And she refused to acknowledge him by name for the longest time. And it's just so endearing. And especially after you find out that he screwed the cartel over to help those children, cheesy orphans. But
orphans.
But at the same time, it's the fact that he basically put a death warrant on himself to help them. But me, I'm a sucker for the quirky loser character.
And to be honest, I have no objection to Ziggy. He might be my second or third favorite character, again, behind Flynn and everything. I just don't see a lot of objections to him because I like, again, that he fails everything he does, but he keeps trying and all that. Exactly like you said, the only thing I wonder about him is why did he want to be a criminal in the first place and what was drawing him to that lifestyle? Because I don't recall anything explaining that.
To me, there wasn't anything explaining it. It's just said, oh, he was with them. To me, it just seems like, I'm assuming that he got involved with them before the end.
He tried to get involved with, because in his episode Ranger Green, I believe, he was getting involved with them. He was going, hustling money from Jungle Karma Pizza and all that, which, that connects to the Power Ranger universe just because that one sign. But, he tried to do it, and then when he went to Fresno Bob, they got into an argument, and bam, end of the world. So that's kind of where that story ended.
And to me, I'm just guessing that he probably joined them because he wanted some way to feel like he was cool and tough.
Yeah, and assuming this is a universe where Power Rangers don't exist, he's not like Guy from Gokaiger or anything like that. Or But I see a lot of those two characters because he does have, again, like you said, joking nature. He has that kind of enthusiasm and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember him just like jumping for joy that he was a Power Ranger, but he did find it, rarely.
And he was trying to help them constantly.
Exactly. Even when
he brought out all the candidates for it.
Don't get me started on that episode. We'll get into specific episodes here when we get there. But yeah, so again, no real objection to Ziggy. I thought he was a good character. I thought, even though, again, doesn't have the way of the world like he probably should, but his character's not designed for that, just like Flynn's character.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, he's fine. And now we come to the Wolverine of the group, Dylan. And like I said with Tanaya, the backstory is great. I think the setup was well. I thought his character was done well, but I just didn't kind of like the payoff. Because it is realistic that he doesn't remember anything, I don't know if I like him getting with his sister at the end, because I think it would have been more if she had actually died. Because I think if there was more death in the series, which I know is an odd thing to say since most of the world's population is dead, it would have a little bit more resonance with it.
But, as you pointed out, it doesn't feel like the end of the world, and the fact that no major character deaths happen.
Exactly.
No deaths happen in the present.
And I will say this, it seems like Dylan is the only character who stands outside of everything. And by that I mean, he is the character, he's like the temple of what we should have for this post-apocalyptic world. Mm-hmm. And nobody else seems to fit that. He was transported from Terminator Salvation into the show, is kind of how I feel about it. Because he is the one making the comments, not so much snarky, but he's like the one pointing out, Go Launcher, that's a dumb name. And then they have to force for an acronym or something like that for it to make sense. So, he is the most real, and in this, he's in the right environment. Vengeance is in the right environment. Nobody else really belongs there.
I like Dylan. I really came to appreciate his dry wit, which is fun because we have to tie him back to my favorite character, Ziggy, because it's his friendship with Ziggy that humanizes him. And when that wit starts emerging, that's when I really started to like him as a character.
And their relationship was awesome. I liked that. To make them the Green and the Black Ranger, which they have a lot of screen time together from the Go On Your Source, that's awesome.
And, you talk about him being an outsider. Well, I think he and Ziggy got to be outsiders together. Because for a while, none of the Rangers liked Ziggy.
Yeah.
The only person who was on Ziggy's side would be Dylan.
Yeah. Because he was the one that brought him in. And that opening sequence, I thought, was really good with them, where he meets Ziggy for the first time. That was like, for 5 minutes, the show was awesome. In my mind. So, but again, he is the Wolverine of the series, the whole memory loss thing and all that, and I think it works. The fact that he had to be almost coerced into becoming a Ranger, that works too. It's a little bit cliche. I think there were a lot of cliches in this, but yeah.
At the same time, it's nice to have someone who didn't really want to be a Ranger, because a lot of times you have people who jump at the call. You have other times, such as in SPD, when Jack had to be coerced into being a Ranger.
Prisoner to be a Power Ranger.
Yeah, but most of the time, there's like, Rangers, cool, let's do it. I mean, that's how I'd act, but it's understandable that there would be people who do not want a responsibility.
And of course, in this environment, that would make probably more sense, given how let's be honest here. RPM had the highest threat level of any villain, I think, up to that point. And even now, because let's be honest, you got Rita and all that, but Rita didn't kill 6 billion people. Lord Zed didn't kill 6 billion people. So, there is that.
I don't know, we can compare it to the United Alliance of Evil in terms of threat level.
Well, okay, so I will grant you that countdown to destruction, but we hadn't seen destruction on this level.
Yes,
cities are gone. People are exterminated. That didn't even happen in Countdown to Destruction.
That's true.
And it also happened off-screen.
It was threatened in Countdown to Destruction because they had that Planet Buster missile.
Yeah, which thankfully wasn't actually used on the planet.
Yeah.
So, but the threat was up there definitely with this.
It was the most successful villain.
Exactly, more so than, because I think Linkara, he's up to SPD right now, and he says that Grum, I think, is the most successful because most of his plans went through.
Grum popped a planet in the opening.
Exactly. But, so let's kind of get back on track here.
Yes.
Of course, the last two Rangers, and we'll talk about them together, because it's really hard to decipher those between each other. That's Jim and Gemma.
Yeah, watch the series. Rarely are they referred to as individuals.
And, I thought it was interesting. And let's actually talk about Alphabet Soup while we're here, too. Because
why did they go with that name?
It's not bad, to be honest. I mean, I can understand it. It's a code name. You're just not going to say child abductor. I can't talk today. But, okay. I like the idea that they have connection with Dr. K, because that seems to make her more involved and invested. Mm-hmm. Even though, again, she should, because it's in the world, but she's more involved and invested with these characters and what they're doing. I like that. And may I say that Gemma was hot. She really was. I think she was Korean. I think he was Vietnamese, though, which I can spot things like that, and so can my wife, because, it's Hollywood. Why is Sulu played by a Korean guy now?
I'm sure they assume that kids would be like, oh, it's something Asian.
Yeah. But in any case, I like that they're these super geniuses, and that they're, I guess quirky would be the right word for it.
Yes.
Because, I don't want to say there's anything mentally wrong with them, but you have to question somebody who's like super intelligent but then wants to blow stuff up. That's kind of like a serial killer or a homicidal maniac kind of thing going on, but they really kind of downplay it, because all they're like, oh, boom, boom, bash, bash, oh, let's do this. That's kind of their personality.
What they remind me of are the characters in Zombieland.
Okay, I haven't seen that, so please explain.
Okay, so Woody Harrelson's character in Zombieland takes pure and utter delight in the fact that he's been put in a world where his purpose is to kill these enemies that want to kill him.
Okay.
So you talk about characters who aren't reacting well to the apocalypse. You talk about how Dylan realizes the weight of the fact that humanity's extinction could be right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And I think Jim and Gemma are an alternate way to react to that.
Okay, I'll bite.
Because if you think about end of the world, nothing left to lose, mm-hmm. because they didn't really know about Corinth.
They didn't know about the world, really.
Yeah. All they knew is that there were these robots that wanted them dead, mm-hmm. and that they had Ranger powers, they had Zords.
They have a perverse enjoyment in it, which is okay with robots. If it was anything else, it would be a little bit more disturbing. But there is a perverse joy in what they do, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. I never really thought about it so much.
It's like the end of the world. Why not have fun with it?
And that's what they're doing. I mean, at least they're on the good side. I mean, I'm glad that they didn't make them like they did and go under like, we're too good for you guys, so stay away.
Oh, yeah,
which always bothers me with any Ranger, even going back to Eric. That'd be like the one thing that bothers me is I'm too good for you. I'm not going to do whatever and stuff. But, the last thing I want to go ahead and say about probably Jim Joe, because there isn't much to say, to be quite honest. But I really wish they would have done more of Jim and Flynn. Because again, those are like my two favorite characters. I would have liked to see.
They were teased, all right.
Yeah, it was teased. There were several episodes in which they were teased, but nothing came of it in the final. Sort of like Danny and Kendall from Wild Force. It was teased throughout the series. It was a plot point for a couple of episodes, and they completely forgot it. But it's not like they forgot to call the actress in for the final, like they did in Wild Force. This girl was there, and they just didn't do anything about it.
Maybe it was because maybe the producers and writers were worried about ship fatigue.
Well, I mean, you already got the Black Ranger and Yellow Ranger unrealistically together, I think.
Plus, you had the rampant shipping between Dr. K and Ziggy.
Yeah, but at least they did imply a relationship at the end.
And they had chemistry. I admit, those two had chemistry because it was kind of a slap kiss thing.
Yeah, but I just felt that the Gemma Flynn relationship, I think, was more genuine.
I would have liked it because, again, it's characters we both like.
Yeah. Okay, so, I think we hit the main points about the allies and all that kind of stuff.
Although...
and of course, Alphabet Soup and the cartels and all that. And of course, I've already said, once again, my worst villains, what I think of the European villains, how they don't fit, how Vengix doesn't live up to what he is. So my question for you is just kind of briefly say, what do you think of the villains? Because you've listened to what I said about it. So what do you think about that?
Okay, so... I know you mentioned that you didn't quite care for Tanaya.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I think she's great. Again, this kind of goes back to the idea of Jim and Gemma, of people who enjoy their role in a bad situation.
Well, I mean, she's not in a bad situation when you think about it. She's just sadistic.
But she enjoys what she's doing.
Yes.
Something I'll agree with you on. Okay. You mentioned that you did not like how she popped her hand off to... Yeah, because
that whole comedy thing really ruins it. That and the cannon in the refrigerator. I mean, because again, that's the main issue I have with the villains. I have with the series as a whole is this juxtaposition of the end of the world with Saturday morning cartoon comedy, and she plays into that. She could have been a good villain because she's got a great backstory. Mm-hmm. Her character was good. I mean, yes, she was transforming into that evil cyborg Astroma type thing towards the end there, which they just recycled.
I hate that plot device because they did it in space. They did it with Frax.
Well, not. No. Okay, they did do it, but it was different there. It worked for those two characters, but because it's a rehash and because of the character we know, again, it's a Ranger's sister who has become a villain. It's the same thing. Who
starts coming around, but then the villain's like, nope, I'm going to reel you back.
Exactly. And I got to ask this question, and maybe you can answer for me. Why is Kilobyte sexist? You listen to the video. Why is he... Dome Dolls was horrible. It's like the third worst episode to me, and we'll probably talk about that here in a second, but why? I don't get... He even foils her plan, goes against Vengix taking over because she's a girl. Not because she's human, but because she's a girl. Please explain this.
I don't know. You've watched more... You've watched Go Andre.
Yes.
Is that in the Sentai at all? That's the only thing
it is. Now, the character that Kilobyte's from is like, he's better than the three generals, basically. So he looks at himself like that, but no, this whole sexist thing, that's not
I guess I have no idea where that came from. And
neither do I. I mean, the whole episode of Dome Dolls is feminist empowerment, which backfires on them. Because honestly, look at what happens. Let's talk about that episode real quick. So you remember the episode where all the men are paralyzed and only the women can save them?
Yes.
Who do we have? We have Vasquez, we have Kay, we have Summer, and we have Gemma. Okay, look at Vasquez. She's panicking in every scene that she is in. Okay? So there's a great role model. Kay's just being Kay, so there's nothing really offensive there. But the girls, when they start fighting, they're holding them off. But they lose. They get their butts handed to them, and I have a screenshot of the guy Rangers coming in morphed to help them. That's how they beat the villain, not the girls by themselves. Because the Go Andre episode this is based off of is where all the guys are frozen, just the guys, not the whole world, but the five Rangers, and we got the young Rangers. I think the two youngest. They have to go ahead and fight the villain, and they do. They win. They overcome by themselves. They do it on their own. They defeat the female Banky with help of Bear RV, who's like the only female engine too. So it's like she's in the road attack Zord, and she's got in the two of them. They defeat the enemy. Now, granted, they needed all the Rangers to form the Megazords in the end.
But they took it down on their own.
They took the belt and they broke the spell that was keeping the male Rangers frozen. And they were even creative to hide the male Rangers so they wouldn't get killed in the crossfire or attacked. They showed competence and intelligence. The only person showing competence and intelligence was Dr. K. Because, the other girls did something, but again, they couldn't win on their own. They needed the men to help them. So whatever pro-feminist movement you had there backfires. The only person...
I dislike girl power episodes on Power Rangers in general.
But again, it just doesn't work.
This isn't me being sexist.
Yeah.
It's just that the formula is so overplayed.
Yes, and it's not sexist to overplay the formula, but again, it's how you realize it. And in this, just the comparison between the Go On Your episode and this episode, one's clearly better than the other. So if you saw the Go On Your first and you saw this one, you're extremely disappointed, like me, and you have this disappointed look on your face like they actually succeeded in the Japanese version.
No, it's just I'm not familiar with Go On Your.
Yeah, and you don't have to be to realize that it doesn't work in Dome Dolls.
And I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't go like that.
Exactly.
Actually, while we're on this topic of feminist empowerment, you know which Rangers I think are good examples of feminist empowerment? Taylor and Jen.
Yes, very much so.
They don't need to have girl power episodes.
Exactly. They never did. No, I can't think of a single girl power episode. Like there's an episode maybe where Jen takes down a monster on her own, and there's a few episodes where Taylor does.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not like we girls must unite because the men aren't here to help us or something.
What was the Yellow Ranger's name in time for a second?
Katie.
Yeah, it's not. They didn't have an episode where Jen and Katie had to do it.
Exactly.
There are episodes when Jen did it, and there are episodes when Katie did it.
Exactly.
But it's not girls taking down the monster. It's this individual taking down a monster.
Exactly. But again, what they're playing up in Dome Dolls is it's just the girls, and the girls don't succeed.
I hate it when they did it again in Megaforce.
I haven't seen that episode. Probably, I'm a little bit behind on Megaforce right now.
It's dumb.
Okay. But, let's segue into other episodes, because there are two other episodes specifically we want to talk about as being, I think, god-awfully horrendous.
Okay, let's do it.
Dome Dolls was number 3 in those. Number 2 is Ranger Green. Now, the whole thing about Ziggy becoming the Green Ranger in accident, that's fine. I have no issue with that. What I have an issue with is the American Idol style of choosing the next Ranger. And folks, he is laughing here, and I'm just like... I literally got a headache watching this episode.
I accepted on the basis of Ziggy's character.
Okay, so Ziggy may do that. I can see him doing it. I don't see the Ranger sitting down like Simon Cadwell or whatever his name is. Yeah. Cal. It's like Simon Cal and Tina Turner. Who is that girl? Paula Abdul. I don't see them doing that. And then, at that point... getting approval from his father saying, yes, this juggler I think will make the best Green Ranger. Let's give him the powers. And it wasn't even like there was a strongman or a karate guy or anybody that was useful.
That would be a typical choice.
But I know it works towards Ziggy's character, but it doesn't work towards the main plot, which is finding the Green Ranger. Which, by the way, because they have no screening whatsoever on identification, that Tanaya almost got the powers. Because yes, they try. I think they tried scanning her. I forget how that works, but she had no identification, which you would think in a domed city they would have everybody identified in that city.
But at the same time,
no fingerprints or anything. I mean, it's flimsy how this plot works, and it's slapped together as far as them logically doing
this. I will
this.
defend the lack of identification because, if, as you pointed out earlier, that people just drove in.
Yeah.
But I think the people in Corinth were more...
But it's been like a year or two since it happened, and you would think by that point they should be able to identify every single person in the city. Granted that type of lack of security plays into the final, where we get the cyborgs, basically.
Yes.
Now, you can call that great foreshadowing, but I just think the episode, it falls flat because of that.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you on that one. I guess I forgive it because of Ziggy's character. I forgive it because Ziggy was putting forth the effort to help these people, most of which were mean to him. Yes,
I understand. But as soon as Dylan saw one of those guys, he would turn to him and go, I could find somebody better in the prison down below to be a ranger than this juggler. Mm-hmm. Okay, so enough ranting on that. I got the final one I want to go ahead and rant about.
All right, hit me.
And action.
Yeah, that was...
Okay, we're, I think 7 or 8 episodes from the final. There's a clip show. If Vengeance 1 is the clip show.
But I liked it if Vengeance 1 is...
But that's... The point is, you always have to have that mandatory clip show to save money. But they saved money even more by having a behind-the-scenes DVD featurette as an episode. Now remember, there are 700 episodes by the time RPM ends. The last episode was the 700th. That means this episode counts somehow. I don't get it. It's non-continuity. They're referring to each other by their character names.
Yeah, that was surreal. You want me to be honest?
Okay.
I didn't watch that episode.
You should.
I was looking at the episode listing on Wikipedia. It said Ziggy takes you behind the scenes. I'm like, whatever. Moving on.
See, now I watched it when it first came out, and I didn't even read the thing on my DVR. I just pushed play, and as soon as he said, stop, freeze, whatever, and everybody stopped, and he addressed the camera, I'm like, what? What's going on here? Because I was really surprised. I didn't know what was coming.
Okay, so...
And then I fast forward through the entire DVR. I was like, okay, let's get to a plot. Where's the plot? Where's the plot? Got to the credits. No plot. All right, what was the point of that? So I just deleted it. I didn't even watch the whole damn thing.
Yeah, see, I watched it on YouTube because I found out about it after the original airing. Yeah, that's waste of time. You are completely right there.
I mean, it's...
The only thing I can imagine is that, RPM probably had to scrounge for budget as is.
Well, again, because Disney didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
They threw everything into it. Wouldn't it make more sense not to make an episode than to make one that has no purpose?
Maybe there was contractual obligations towards episode number.
Mm-hmm. But they could have at least turned another episode to a two-parter. I mean, they typically do that. When you got to make an episode number, you turn something into a two-parter.
That's true, and there are plenty of times.
And it wasn't like what they did with Forever Red, where they already had two-parter, and they wouldn't let them make a two-parter, which, was the whole thing. It was like they did reinforcements from the future. They were going to make Forever Red two parts, but they're like, no, you guys just had two-parter with a bunch of guest stars. We got to trim it down here. You got to have it as one part. That's not, that wasn't the case. So I question its existence, but what does it add? It adds nothing to the series.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so I think the last thing we're going to go ahead and talk about right here, because... Well, actually, tell me what you want to talk about before we get to this last point right here.
Before we get to wrapping this up, I wanted to talk about Dr. K. We've indirectly referred to her several times, mostly based on her relationships with other characters.
Okay.
She is probably... I guess I couldn't, number my favorites. She's up there, along with Ziggy and Jim and Gemma.
Okay.
Plus Flynn.
Yeah.
I like in that she's... Just because I think she has the most character growth over the course of the show.
I can see that, yes.
How she goes from Death Note style identity hiding to, revealing herself to slowly just opening up to everyone.
Even admitting she was the one that caused the apocalypse.
Yeah, admitting she caused the apocalypse. And even at the very end, opening up to someone for a possible relationship.
Yeah. Although, do you really think it was natural that they would forgive her so quickly?
I think they forgave her because they had no option. What are you going to do? Put the person who's who's maintaining the equipment for your last hope against these machines? You're going to throw her in jail?
See, I didn't think... Well, I don't think they would throw her in jail. I just would worry about the trust factor. Because that's happened in a lot of shows before where they realize the past. But I guess I think to your point, because of where she is and what she does, she's far too important for them to even worry about
that. And I think that by that point, she had shown to everyone that she genuinely regretted what happened, that it was an accident.
Yeah.
Accident doesn't excuse it, but... And
the whole way it happened was weird, so...
And that she was completely committed to trying to protect the city and drive off the machines.
Yeah, again, no issue with her. I think she was good in every sense that you said. But only one question I have about Dr. K. Why did she start as just a giant letter on the wall with a voice? Right. I don't get that, because if it lasted half the series, I would understand. But it lasted like 2 or 3 episodes, and then she reveals herself. And it's like, wow, the girl from the Lord of the Rings is... yes, because that's how I look at it now. I see the little girl in the 2 towers. I was like, wow. But that's... I don't get it. I didn't get that.
Honestly, I thought that somebody was making a Death Note reference.
Well, it didn't change anything, I think, overall. But
Maybe the writers thought it was a good idea at first.
And then they had to change it.
They probably realized that it was better for character drama and comedy to have a person there.
Not to mention, because you think it'd be like a Zordon-like thing, but, you already have Colonel Truman, this is a government organization, it's much different than the band of 5 teenagers alone with a robot assistant, so... Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We'll probably hit a good hour on this, but that's fine. If people are still listening, then they're still listening. That's fine.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to talk about is its placement in the Power Ranger continuity. Now, the biggest thing when the series came out was, where does it fit? How can it be the end of the world and Tommy and Jason and all these other Rangers be dead? And here we are, and there's no help from Akatar, there's no help from SPD. Well, thankfully, because of Clash of the Red Rangers, it established it's in an alternate universe. So now we have 3 Power Ranger timelines. We have the main continuity, which is everything but RPM. Well, there's a question about Megaforce, but we'll get to that in just a second here. There is the movie continuity, which is the separate, and then we have the RPM continuity. How do you feel about it being separate from the main Power Ranger universe?
I'm okay with it being separate because it's a lot less headaches trying to place it into continuity.
Exactly.
And now with Clash of the Red Rangers, by establishing it's an alternate dimension, an alternate dimension that can be visited,
yes,
it shows that yes, that setting is still there. It's not being erased.
Yes, there was. It was not like it's an alternate future that was deleted because they went back in time and changed something. And you know what? I'm glad it's an alternate dimension because I don't like the series. I don't like it being part of Power Rangers continuity. But the fact that it's another Power Rangers story that could be told, but it's on a different timeline and all that, I feel better about that because now we're in a world where that is more normal for them to act this way in light of the apocalypse. Because if you think back to everything from Day of the Dumpster on up, this would not be the way I think the Power Rangers characters would act. Based on who we have.
Thinking about the obstacles Venjix would have faced were he to exist in the normal.
Yeah, because he'd have to take down, because even if this was, let's say it takes after SPD, he would not only contend with the alien Rangers at that point.
At SPD.
Well, it's in the future, but I don't think they ever established what year specifically.
Yeah.
But in any case, they would have to take care of SPD, the Alien Rangers, the GSA, the Galaxy Rangers, Lightspeed Rescue,
the Wild Zords.
And I'm sure Time Force probably would have had some involvement with that somehow, however their organization works.
Because how many Zords came down in the finale of Lightspeed?
Exactly. The whole point I have is that it would not work in a major Power Ranger universe. I can believe that there may have been Power Rangers before then in the RPM continuity, but not the Power Rangers we're used to.
You saw that Overdrive element in one episode.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that people are drawing conclusions that's the same timeline, but we had to wait 2 years to find out that it wasn't.
And the way I viewed that was,
they probably invented costumes or something. It's parallel. Certain things happen, certain things didn't. Maybe this is where Zordon never fought Rita or Rita never existed. It's something like that. There's a convergence.
Just alternate universes, a different timeline where, the morphing grid exists, but it wasn't accessed until this time.
Exactly. And it just makes it a lot easier for placement, but... And this is where we're getting into Megaforce, because this is something I kind of wanted to talk about once they introduced the Ranger Keys. And now, as of today's date, today's March 27th, we know for a fact that they're doing the Gokaiger suits as part of Super Megaforce, and they'll transform the previous teams, or at least that's what it seems.
I want to do an episode on that alone. But that's...
And we'll do that, but as far as it ties in RPM, I would have to ask the question, why are there RPM keys?
Were RPM keys visible in the...
I want to say they are. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but let's be honest here. We know in the Legend War we saw RPM Rangers in the flashback. So keys would have to go ahead and be there if Troy's visions are from the future. That would open up these questions for me. One, why are the RPM keys there? Why are they getting keys from another universe? Because if this Legendary War is happening, did the RPM Rangers actually come from their universe to fight in a war that does not involve them whatsoever? That would be the first question.
It doesn't involve them whatsoever, but you also have to consider that Scott, when he was in the regular universe, formed a friendship with the Samurai Rangers, and they helped him protect his universe.
Okay.
Because Dr. Cog was there to take water from the Sansu River to attack Corinth.
Okay. So I see what I think I see what you're saying right there, that he owes them a favor.
And that, you know, Scott's the type of guy who, when he makes a friend, he helps out his friends. If he somehow got word that, you know, stuff is going down on the main Earth, I could see them wanting to help out, especially if it's after Venjix was defeated.
But that raises another question, because remember, Venjix is inside the Morpher now. So what does that mean? I mean, think about that, because if it takes place after Venjix, which would make the most sense, because why would they be fighting their own war and they go fight another war only to lose their powers? So if it takes place after Venjix, Venjix is in the Morpher. Is he going to manifest? Is he going to be the reason for the war? I mean, what
honestly, what I'm guessing is going to happen, the writers will not acknowledge it whatsoever.
Exactly. That's going to be...
And that's no fault of the RPM writers.
Because we're not talking about the RPM writers. Yeah. We're talking about the Megaforce writers who've already screwed up on continuity issues within 2 episodes of Megaforce. Which I'm not going to get into right now. We'll probably talk about that later. But I'm just finding it odd in my mind that we have this parallel universe, and yet we're still trying to connect it to the main continuity as much as we can. It's like we want it to be part of the main continuity, but we know it can't be because of the premise of the series. So, okay. So just any final thoughts you want to go ahead and say on RPM?
I respect all of your opinions on it. You made very good points about its problems. It's not perfect, but you know what series is.
Yeah.
I like it for the characters. I like it for changing up the formula, and I also like poking fun at the formula.
And I guess that's maybe my issue, is I'm taking it seriously because they asked us to take it seriously in the first episode. Because they pretty much said, expect end of the world, expect great battles, and then by episode 3, hand puppets and jugglers. and that's where it loses me, is basically on that. Because I know, okay, people are going to say, it's Power Rangers. But you know what? As a dedicated fan, I expect something that after every year they should be getting better. Because you look at 1993 and look at what we have now. There is a progression of sorts. I'm going to admit Megaforce has kind of regressed a little bit, but
Megaforce and Samurai, please.
Yeah, but things have at least gotten better. Because I mean, even look at Lightspeed Rescue. Time Force was better than Lightspeed Rescue. It got better the next year. I would say Wild Force is better than Time Force. That's my opinion, but it got better. You know, there is a progression in the series, and I really think that RPM took a step back, not really understanding its audience, not really understanding its premise, how it wanted these 2 things. It wanted comedy, it wanted Dire End of the World, and those just don't match.
And you make a point to me when we were talking, and you haven't made it here, that it was the season that no one wanted to make.
Exactly. And that may have played a part into it, which... It goes back to the whole parallel thing. We can just write it off because nobody wanted it. Frankly, that and the Power Rangers redo in 2010, we can easily forget those. To me, those are the dark days of Power Rangers, which I think are almost over.
Maybe.
So, yeah. Okay, so I think we've gone long enough. I want to thank again Shadow Raptor for joining me here today.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm going to bring him back one of these days, probably next time. We'll see. But I want to thank you guys for listening to us and everything. If you have any ideas for episodes or comments you want to make, please leave them in the comments below or email them to me. Otherwise, everybody have a good day, and the tavern is now closed.